If you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you might be aware of the fact that they actually did make a Black Widow movie at one point in time. And if you're just an average moviegoer, you probably completely forgot about that.
This video contains spoilers.
Before I hop into the review, keep in mind this is all just my opinion. Share what you think about the movie in the comments section down below, and without any further ado, let's hop right into it. So this movie starts off with a flashback in the year 1995 in Ohio, where basically Black Widow was a kid and it's with her and her adopted family, because her parents are like secret agents and whatnot. I have to say though, this whole opening sequence is very drawn out and just kind of awkward. And there is kind of this little action sequence here, but as I said, it's just very drawn out. And I think this whole opening sequence either should have been much shorter, or they should have done the superior way of doing flashbacks where they just show little clips throughout the movie. Kind of like what Christopher Nolan did in Batman Begins. That's definitely a very underrated way of storytelling. Regardless, most of this movie takes place in the year 2016 following the events of Civil War. And that's pretty much the whole weird thing about this movie. It's not an origin story, although stuff about it ties into Black Widow's origins. And this literally came out 2 years after Avengers Endgame, the movie where Black Widow died. They honestly should have just released this in like 2016 or 17. But anyways, this movie follows Black Widow in hiding, and then she reunites with her sister Yelena. And she figures out the Red Room, the place where she was trained, is still a thing, and so she has to go free the Black Widows or whatever. And just as I said, honestly, this should have been an origin story taking place before the events of Iron Man 2. And anyways, the fact that this was released after Endgame didn't really affect the story at all, except for the fact that the post-credits scene was like setting up a thing in Hawkeye. But that does not justify this film coming out in the year 2021. So overall, I would say the acting is good, but when it comes to the actual characterization, I think they got Black Widow right. I mean, it's kind of hard to mess her up, because she had already been in multiple films throughout the MCU, so they kind of knew what they were doing with her. She's pretty consistent in each film, and the only thing that's different here is you get to see a little bit more of an emotional side to her, but it's not really anything too crazy. But I have to say, the characters Yelena and Red Guardian are just super annoying in this movie, in my opinion. And Black Widow herself is a more serious character, so I just don't think their personalities are very compatible. And of course, I say that there are actually plenty of good examples where characters have wildly different personalities, and that actually enhances the film and makes it better. But in this case, I just think it was too much, and that really just does come down to personal opinion, because I know plenty of people that don't really have a problem with it. And both of these characters are going to appear in the Thunderbolts movie, and I will say, having seen the trailers for that, I do think that their personalities will be more compatible with the characters on that team. But just in this movie, it feels very out of place. And then, of course, you also have her adoptive mother here, who is just pretty forgettable in my opinion. And then the main villain, Draco, who's like the head of the Red Room. I just found him to be a pretty generic villain that didn't have much depth, and he was just pretty forgettable. Taskmaster is another huge character in here, where they changed the character from the comics, where in the comics it was like a man. And then here as a plot twist, they changed it to where it was like Draco's daughter, and she was basically brainwashed. Now, I don't mind when Marvel every once in a while tries to do something new to kind of subvert people's expectations, but as I said, this was just kind of a miscalculation. It's basically on the same level of what they did with the Mandarin in Iron Man 3. There is some good fight choreography in here, just some classic martial arts stuff. And then, of course, you have a lot of over-the-top explosions and that typical stuff that you get from comic book movies. There are some moments here and there that are meant to be kind of funny, but it's kind of that generic MCU humor. Nothing that really stood out or is too memorable. Pretty much just banter between characters, but not like Avengers level banter. When it comes to the costume design in this movie, I actually do think it is pretty good, especially with Red Guardian's costume. Of course, Black Widow has the white costume, and then her costume in the final battle of the film, I think, is her best costume in the entire MCU. It just has a nice red and black color scheme. And while I did criticize Taskmaster in this movie, the costume here is pretty great. I wouldn't say the cinematography is anything too special. I mean, it's fine, but there are other movies in the MCU that are just more visually appealing. And there is some bad VFX in here, particularly in the final battle. A A lot of comic book films these days actually have some of the greatest film scores of all time, but not really in this case. I didn't find it to be too memorable, and just in general, I didn't find the soundtrack to be anything too great. So overall, I would say that this was kind of a misfire, one of the weakest films in the MCU. I know a lot of people that do find it to be pretty enjoyable, but just in my opinion, while they got the character of Black Widow right, all of the side characters were just completely forgettable or annoying, and so that drastically affects the quality of the movie in my opinion. So overall, on the quality scale of 0 to 100, I'll give it a 45%. And if you're a huge fan of Marvel that has to see every movie in the timeline, obviously you should check this out. But otherwise, I wouldn't really recommend it. But if you have seen it, let me know what you think about it in the comment section down below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.